Hey, what's up, everybody? Hammer Heart Metal Reviews here once again. Today we are doing a response video. This is the Metal Tag 2025. This is a series of questions started by the Heavy Metallurgy channel. They do this pretty much every year. I've never actually done this before. I've been considering it the last couple years, but I just didn't end up doing it. But I really like the questions this year. A couple of my fellow YouTubers tagged me in their videos this year, so I thought, hey, the least I can do is do a response to this as well. The question sounded interesting. So if you're unfamiliar with this concept, essentially it's 20 questions. We're just going to run through. Everyone does the same questions and goes through the answers and just discusses our responses to them. So not a lot of an intro here. Let's just get into this. I'm sure you've seen a ton of these out on YouTube. I'm a little bit behind the schedule here. I'm a couple weeks later than probably most of these have come out, but I wanted to do it anyways. So here we go. First question. Hype. Name a release that I am eagerly anticipating in 2025. Well, I'll go with the band on the shirt that I am wearing. Have a Crew is releasing a new album, Tavastland, next month in February. I'm extremely excited for that. Finnish pagan black metal, riffs for days. One of the best modern black metal bands out there, in my opinion. Super stoked on it. There's a tons of great albums that I'm looking forward to, but this one would definitely be near the top of that list. So yeah, that's the answer I'm going with for the first question. Up next, show the 25th item in my collection. Okay, so I'm more of a CD collector. I only have a couple vinyls, so I didn't even go look at vinyls. I am going with CDs only. I list them all alphabetically on my shelf. So my 25th item is Alda with the album Tahoma. Absolutely great, killer atmospheric black metal from the States, bringing a lot of folk influence there. If you're unfamiliar with this band, this is actually my favorite album by them. It just happened to be the 25th one on my shelf, but great one to recommend if you're unfamiliar. This would be for fans of bands like Agalloch, Panopticon, Falls of Rhoros, stuff in that vein. But yeah, absolutely killer stuff. That's the 25th album on my shelf. Up next, Overdue. Name an older band that I checked out for the first time in 2024 and loved. So the band that I'm picking is Heaven's Gate. This is a German power metal band. I had heard the name quite often before, but for whatever reason, I had just never really gone and checked them out. And specifically, the album that I have really fallen in love with is called Livin' in Hysteria. I can't get enough of this album now. I haven't bought it yet. I hope to if I find the CD for a decent price. But yeah, this is for fans of bands like Blind Guardian, Halloween, Running Wild. It's just got that German power metal flavor that I absolutely love. There's great riffs. The vocals are amazing. It features Sasha Paeth on guitars, who's probably more well known for being a producer of tons of great power metal albums. But yeah, I don't know why I hadn't checked them out, but I'm glad that I did. It's a great album. I haven't checked out their entire discography yet. I've only listened to the first few, this one being my favorite. But yeah, go check out Heaven's Gate if you have not. Up next, Feeding the Monkey. How do I typically purchase most of my music? Okay, so a mix for sure. I don't think there's one method for how I purchase music. I have a couple local stores that I go to, one of them being like a used CD and vinyl store that also sells some new stuff as well. And then there's like the more commercial store that still gets some bigger name releases. So I go to those quite often, but probably the majority of my music purchasing is like on Bandcamp or just from the artists' labels themselves. Whenever possible, get a bunch at once in the mail, save on shipping costs if you get a ton at the same time. But yeah, there's not really one method to how I buy. I kind of do a little bit of everything wherever I can find an album for a decent price. Up next, Enigma. Show a metal album that's musically very hard to place within a subgenre. Okay, so this one I am going with the band Seven Spires. I should have taken the cover out here. It's always hard to see in the reflection of my phone. Seven Spires with the album Gods of Debauchery. This was their third album from a few years back. So like loosely this band is considered symphonic metal if I had to put them in one subgenre, but I consider them very hard to place just within one subgenre because they bring in so many different elements. They have songs on here that wouldn't be out of place on a Melodeath album. Then there's some that wouldn't be out of place on a black metal album. They've even got a song on here that's pretty much like K-pop influenced, which is very strange. Probably my least favorite song on the album, if I'm being completely honest, but it still suits the flow of the album. They pull from so many different styles and influences to make their own sound, which is super impressive. They got a power metal base with their symphonic metal, but elements of symphonic black metal, death metal, doom metal, even in some spots. Like, they're just all over the place with their genres, but they still make it sound really cohesive. This has definitely become one of my favorite bands over the last few years. And yeah, if you haven't checked out this album, go give it a listen. All right, up next, Eating Crow. Name an album that I used to hate, but now it finally clicked. So this one's tough for me because albums that I hate, I generally wouldn't really go back to ever because of the sheer volume of amazing music that's out there. If there was something that I didn't really think that I enjoyed, then I would probably never go back to it. So I'm not necessarily going to talk about an album that I hated that now has finally clicked. I'll just say an album or era of a band that I didn't love before, but now I like a little bit better. And that is like the more proggy folk era of Opeth. Specifically here, I've got the album Pale Communion. So I didn't ever hate this album. Even when it came out, I didn't love it by any stretch. I thought it was okay. But it wasn't really something that I found myself returning to too often. But this year, I've kind of spent a little bit more time with this era of the band, and it is growing on me a little bit. I still would never put this up there with their classics. It's just not the same kind of music to me. It doesn't invoke the same feelings in me, but I do like it more than I used to. So that's the best answer I can give to that question because, yeah, that's what I came up with. Moving it along. Impulse. Show an album that I blind bought this year. So essentially that would mean an album that I hadn't heard before and then just went and bought it. So I'm going with Winter Filleth and the Imperious Horizon. Of course, I was very familiar with the band, have the rest of their discography, but I consider it a blind buy because I didn't have to hear a second of this album before buying it. I saw it at the store on the day of release. I just bought it because I know the band. I knew what was going to be inside was a quality black metal album, and that's exactly what it is. This is one of my favorites from last year. Absolutely killer atmospheric black metal. So yeah, technically a blind buy. If that's the intent of the question, I don't know. Maybe it meant a band that I've never heard of before that I just bought, but I typically don't do that either unless an album cover just blows me away. But that's the answer I went with for today. Up next, Collector Scum. Show an album that I own more than one pressing of on the same format. So typically I don't do that at all. I'm not that diehard of a collector, I guess. If I have an album, that's the version that I'm keeping unless something goes wrong with the CD. But I will say, as an example, I have bought updated versions of albums and then sold the previous one. An example that comes to mind is Guardians. This is the remastered version that came out a couple years ago. I did previously own the original version, but when I bought this one, then I sold the other one because I just didn't find a need to have both of these CDs in my collection. I mean, this one sounds a little bit better. It's essentially the same album with one bonus track. Why did I need the other one anymore other than just to have two copies? So that's typically not something I do. Once I replace an album with an updated one, if I like that version better, I would sell the other one. But that being said, there are a couple new releases that I am very debating wanting to get, and that is the new Agalok, like collector's editions of Pale Folklore and The Mantle. I have yet to pull the trigger on it. I already own the like standard CDs, the original releases of the CDs, but these collector's editions look so awesome, but they are so expensive, and I just haven't been able to pull the trigger because the shipping to up here in Canada is insane. It's basically $100 for one CD to get here, which I just can't pull the trigger on yet. Maybe someday, but that's one situation where maybe I would buy a second version, but then would I sell the original? Maybe. I don't know. So yeah, that's my answer. Maybe not a very good one for that question, but that's my answer anyways. Next question. Show off a Grail, something that I really wanted that I finally got in 2024. So here I am going with Heavy Load and their EP Metal Conquest. So for a long time, I did not have this EP. I have their full lengths, like Death or Glory, Stronger Than Evil. I had their newest one, Riders of the Ancient Storm. But I've been on the hunt for this EP forever, and it finally got re-released and remastered with some bonus tracks, so that was easy to obtain this year. But I had been wanting this for so long. Anytime I found the EP for sale before, the price was ridiculous, so I never actually bought it. But then I got this re-released on No Remorse earlier in 2024, and yeah, I'm very happy I did, especially like now in retrospect. The singer and guitarist recently passed away, so I have been listening to the shit out of this since then in his honor. But yeah, if you're unfamiliar with Heavy Load, Sweden's original heavy metal band, absolutely top tier stuff. Can't recommend them enough. Go check out Stronger Than Evil and Death or Glory as well, but Metal Conquest is a great EP as well. All right, next question. A plea. What is a Grail item that I'm on the hunt for? Okay, so one CD that I have never been able to find for a decent price at all is Merkgrav with their album Trollskar Skromt Og Kolum Brimming. Probably mispronouncing that. I can't see it. Merkgrav's debut album. I'll put the picture up here. But yeah, I have not been able to find this ever for a decent price. I would love to get it anytime I see it listed anywhere for sale. It's a ridiculous price that I'm not going to pay. But yeah, that is something I would definitely like to get one day. So if any of you out there have that album and want to sell it, give me some details down below. I would gladly buy it for you for a reasonable price. Next question. A Boomerang. Show an album that no matter how many times I purge it from my collection, another copy returns to you. So I don't have too many albums that I have purged from my collection over the years, but the one that came to mind when I read this question is a very basic, probably predictable album here, which is Metallica's Black Album. So yeah, I mean, I originally had this on cassette when I was a teenager. Then I bought the CD. I feel like I bought that CD 2 or 3 times because I sold it, because I got tired of it. But then I bought it again at a used store, probably sold it again. And then actually just last year, I bought a new copy because I didn't have it anymore. But I found a used copy for like $3. It's like, let's add it back to the collection. Why not? Even if I listen to it like once and then it sits there for another decade, so be it. But yeah, that's kind of the one that when I first read this question, like, that just tracks. That makes sense. That's the one that I kind of constantly get rid of because I don't need it in my collection, but then I find a used copy and I just buy it again. Next one, Reunion. Name an artist that I lost track of over time, but then reconnected with in 2024. So for this one, I'm going to go with Dark Forest, which is a great Canadian pagan Viking black metal band. I loved their 2 albums when I heard them, or Aurora Borealis and Land of the Evening Star was the second album. And I hadn't listened to them in forever. I kind of forgot about them, to be honest. And then in one of my videos, someone had commented asking if I heard this band. I'm like, oh, fuck, yeah, I love Dark Forest, but I had not listened to them in such a long time. But then since that comment, I went back and explored again, re-listened, and yeah, great stuff. Definitely highly recommend. I do not actually own either of their CDs. I will hopefully get those at some point, but yeah, I have them digitally, and definitely worth listening to if you have not heard them. Next up, Upstart. Name a new band whose debut album really impressed me recently. Okay, well, here's one that I have talked about on this channel pretty extensively, but in case you're new to the channel or just don't know this band, Helm's Deep with their debut Treacherous Ways. This was a late 2023 release, and this kicks so much ass. The riffs on here are so frantic. Like, this is traditional heavy metal, a dose of power metal if you want, a dose of thrash. It's just a throwback to 80s metal with all these different influences. The vocalist is really unhinged. He brings in elements of, say, like Sabotage, Megadeth, King Diamond, bands like Riot. Like, any and all of those influences can be heard here. It features a couple of the guys from Raven playing bass and guitar, but the main dude behind the band does the vocals on the guitar. And yeah, for a debut, this one just absolutely floored me when it came out, and I'm still spinning it consistently over a year later. If you are unfamiliar and you like old school 80s style heavy metal, honestly cannot recommend this one enough. You will not be disappointed. All right, up next, where am I here? Don't judge a book by its cover. Show a great album that has bad cover art. Okay, so for this one, I am going with King Diamond and the album The Eye. So it's not that this is like absolute shit cover art, but I don't really love it. Like, it's just very basic, especially knowing what came before from King Diamond. Like, his first four albums all had amazing cover art, and then this one just is kind of meh. But the music contained within is still very good. In my opinion, this is the last like top tier King Diamond album. His first five are amazing. Some of the later stuff is still decent as well, but this one still kicks a lot of ass. It's better than the album art for sure. What is up next? It's kind of sticking with album art here. Rembrandt, show an album whose cover art was created by one of your favorite artists. So this one was actually pretty easy. I'm going with Cirith Ungol. Here, the Frost and Fire album, cover art by Michael Whelan. And before showing just that, I'll show you the book as well. Michael Moorcock's Elric of Melniboné series. Here's Stormbringer with the exact same art, because Michael Whelan did the art for all of these books. I am a bit of a fantasy book nerd as well. I read a lot, so anything that kind of incorporates that into the music, I'm a big fan of. But yeah, absolutely love this cover. He does all the Cirith Ungol covers as well as all the Michael Moorcock books in that series. So yeah, that one was a pretty easy one to pick. Next up, name an album that I would like to see reissued on CD. So for this one, I'm going to go with Osculum Infame and their album Door Nu Foglith. This is some epic black metal from France. I have never been able to find a copy at a decent price of this. I would absolutely love for it to get reissued so that I could get myself a copy of this. This is just super epic and atmospheric. It brings in a lot of keyboards to the sound. If you haven't heard this band before, definitely go check them out. It's really killer stuff, super underrated as well. I would love to snag a copy if they would ever come out with a reissue. Up next, name an album from a genre I typically don't listen to too much. Okay, so here I'm going with an album that I do actually own. I don't listen to it very often anymore, but it's a Canadian band called the Headstones. Here's their debut album, Picture of Health. This is like radio rock, alternative rock. Definitely a genre I don't listen to too much of, but I did grow up with this band. I like them fairly enough even still to this day, at least certain songs and albums. Like, while I say it's just straight ahead radio rock, maybe not anything too out of the norm or too outstanding, they always had a darker edge to them where some of their vocal, like the lyric content, is about darker things that would suit my metal mind, if that makes sense. Like my darker set mind from listening to so much metal. They have songs about death, and it suits the kind of stuff that I'm into. I guess I'm explaining this poorly. They're just a straight ahead rock band. I don't listen to that much of this style, but there you go. That's the end of the question. Let's move this along. Up next, what band do I hope to see live in 2025? So I'm kind of gonna go two different ways here. First of all, being one that I feel like I actually have a chance to see that's going to be realistic, because I heard that they are going to be announcing a North American tour soon, and that is Evil Invaders. I don't think they've ever really been over here other than for maybe a show or two, but if they're going to tour through North America, I hope they come close to where I am, because I would absolutely love to see them. I feel like they would put on a great live show just with the high energy speed metal. And I've seen some live clips on YouTube, and I just think it would be a ton of fun. So I think that one could actually happen this year. And then on the other side of things that I think are pretty unrealistic unless I'm going to go travel to Europe, would be my favorite black metal band, Horn. I would absolutely kill to see this band live, but I really doubt that it's going to happen anywhere close to me. So unless I decide to take a very long trip, then probably not going to see it, but that would be a band I would love to see live in 2025. And last but not least, shout out some YouTube channels, whether they're just some of my favorite channels or new to me. So I'm going to start off with a couple channels that shouted me out in response to this video. So the least I can do is give them shout outs back. The first one being Life Eternal. Tony at Life Eternal, me and him, as he just said in his video, we have uncomfortably similar taste, which is like a great thing to say, because it does boggle my mind how similar our tastes are. We have almost identical like bands that we like within atmospheric black metal. And anytime I see him talking about bands, I'm like, I love that too. Like, it's crazy how similar our tastes are. But yeah, he's got a huge CD collection, way more than I have for sure. And I've gotten a lot of recommendations over the years from watching his channel. The other guy that gave me a shout out was Wyatt at the WyattXM channel. This is one of the original YouTubers, music YouTubers, metal YouTubers that I have followed for a long time. And he's clearly one of the best out there. Like, he's got such a specific, unique style, and he doesn't just stick to metal. And that's something I really appreciate from watching his stuff as well. Like myself, I listen to mostly metal. I would say 90% of my listening is metal, which could maybe be a little close-minded at times. But when I want to go branch out and try some new things, I can always count on his channel to give me some great recommendations and just to explore some different things. And I really like how in-depth he gets with some of his videos as well, doing like band histories and stuff. It's just really informative videos, and they're a ton of fun to watch. One of the best channels out there, easily. In addition to that, I wanted to give a shout out to a new channel to me in 2024, a very small up and coming channel, but you should go give him some love, and that is Just Another Heavy Metal Maniac. I just only recently discovered his channel a few months ago. We've chatted a few times, just on comments on each other's videos, but yeah, go give him some love, help him get some more subs. He does some great rankings, favorites of the year, stuff like that. But yeah, just overall, he's got great taste, and you should go give him a sub and check out his channel. So anyways, that is the metal tag for 2025. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It was a lot of fun to put this together. And yeah, that's it. So until next time, Hammerheart Metal Reviews out.